The art of war is simple enough. Find out what your enemy is afraid of. Napoleon Bonaparte. Most people believe success is about working harder. They grind, they hustle, they burn themselves out chasing short-term gains. What they don't understand is that effort alone is never enough. The world doesn't reward blind activity. It rewards calculated action. The truly successful don't simply work harder, they work smarter, anticipating the moves of the market, the shifts in technology, and the desires of the consumer long before their competitors even see them coming. This isn't about luck. It's about understanding the underlying systems at play and positioning yourself for systemic advantage. The difference between winning and losing often comes down to foresight. Anyone can react to the present. Few can accurately predict the future, and even fewer can act on that prediction to their benefit. It's not enough to simply see the potential for disruption. You must also possess the strategic vision to capitalize on it. Think of a chess master. They don't just focus on the immediate move, they analyze the board several steps ahead, considering every possible countermove and contingency. They understand that each individual action is part of a larger, more complex strategy designed to achieve a specific long-term outcome. The reactive individual is trapped in a perpetual cycle of firefighting. They are constantly putting out the flames of immediate problems, never taking the time to address the underlying causes. They are driven by urgency, not by strategy, and as a result, they are always one step behind. The proactive strategist, on the other hand, anticipates the potential problems before they arise and implements preemptive solutions. They understand that preventing a crisis is far more efficient than reacting to one, and they build their systems accordingly. Consider the tech industry. Companies that focus solely on improving existing products without considering the next technological leap inevitably fall behind. They are overtaken by innovators who dare to envision a different future and invest in the technologies that will shape it. This is not about taking wild risks. It's about making calculated bets based on a deep understanding of the underlying trends and a willingness to challenge the status quo. The myth of the self-made individual is a dangerous one. No one achieves success in isolation. Every achievement is the result of a complex interplay of factors, including the contributions of others, the opportunities that are available, and the systems that are in place. The strategic thinker understands this interconnectedness and leverages it to their advantage. They build networks, forge alliances, and create systems that support their long-term goals. They don't see the world as a zero-sum game. They see it as a complex ecosystem in which collaboration and strategic partnerships can lead to mutual benefit. Foresight is not about predicting the future with absolute certainty. It's about developing a framework for understanding the possibilities and probabilities and making decisions that are resilient to change. It's about building optionality into your strategies so that you can adapt to unexpected events and capitalize on unforeseen opportunities. It's about being prepared for multiple scenarios rather than relying on a single, rigid plan. Those who lack foresight are often blinded by their own biases and assumptions. They cling to outdated beliefs and resist change, even when the evidence clearly indicates that a new approach is needed. They are driven by emotion rather than by logic, and as a result, they make poor decisions that ultimately undermine their success. The strategic thinker, on the other hand, is constantly questioning their own assumptions and seeking out new information that can help them refine their understanding of the world. Strategic thinking is a skill that can be learned and developed. It requires discipline, patience, and a willingness to challenge your own beliefs. It requires a commitment to continuous learning and a willingness to embrace complexity. It's not about being smarter than everyone else. It's about being more thoughtful, more analytical, and more strategic in your approach to life and business. The advantage always favors those who see beyond the present and prepare for the future. Foresight isn't simply about predicting events, but about cultivating a mindset. This mindset is one of proactive preparedness, not reactive scrambling. It's about understanding that every decision, every action, creates ripples that extend into the future. Those without foresight are akin to gamblers placing bets on a single number, while the strategic mind is akin to an investor diversifying their portfolio, mitigating risk while maximizing potential return. A key difference lies in the ability to detach emotionally from outcomes. When plans are disrupted or expectations unmet, the reactive mind experiences frustration and despair, often leading to impulsive decisions. The strategic mind, however, views these setbacks as data points, opportunities for recalibration and refinement. It's a perspective shift that transforms potential failures into valuable learning experiences. This is achieved through a deliberate process of self-reflection and critical analysis. It requires a conscious effort to identify and challenge personal biases, to recognize the limitations of one's own perspective. It's about actively seeking out dissenting opinions and alternative viewpoints, not to be swayed by them blindly, but to expand one's understanding of the problem space. Consider the chess grandmaster, many moves ahead. They are not simply calculating the best possible move in the immediate situation, but anticipating their opponent's responses, considering various counter-strategies, and evaluating the long-term consequences of each action. This level of foresight is not innate. It's cultivated through years of rigorous training, disciplined study, and a relentless pursuit of mastery. The same principles apply to strategic thinking in any domain. It demands a commitment to continuous learning, a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances, and a persistent focus on the long game. The reactive individual is often trapped in a cycle of crisis management, constantly putting out fires and responding to immediate threats. They are so focused on the present that they fail to see the patterns that are shaping their future. The strategic thinker, on the other hand, is able to step back and see the bigger picture. They identify the underlying forces at play and develop strategies that address the root causes of problems, rather than just treating the symptoms. This requires a degree of detachment and objectivity, an ability to separate emotions from analysis. It's about making decisions based on data and evidence, rather than on gut feelings or personal preferences. It's a discipline that can be cultivated through practice, by consciously challenging assumptions, seeking out alternative perspectives, and evaluating the long-term consequences of every action. To truly embrace foresight, one must accept the inherent uncertainty of the future. The world is complex and unpredictable, and no amount of planning can guarantee a specific outcome. But by developing a strategic mindset, by cultivating the ability to anticipate possibilities and adapt to change, one can significantly increase their chances of success. It is about creating options and being prepared to seize opportunities as they arise, and about mitigating risks and minimizing the impact of unforeseen events. The strategic mind understands that the future is not something to be feared, but something to be shaped. Consider the rise and fall of blockbuster video. For decades, they dominated the home entertainment market, a seemingly unassailable giant with thousands of stores and a recognizable brand. They were the king of renting movies and video games, and for many, a Friday night trip to Blockbuster was a cherished ritual. But Blockbuster's leadership, blinded by their current success, failed to anticipate the disruption that was brewing on the horizon. They focused on maximizing profits from their existing business model, charging late fees and stocking shelves with the latest releases. They saw the internet as a threat to their retail model, rather than as an opportunity for innovation. Netflix, a small upstart company, emerged with a radically different approach. They offered a subscription service that allowed customers to rent DVDs by mail, eliminating late fees and providing a wider selection of titles. Initially, Blockbuster dismissed Netflix as a niche player, a company that catered to a small segment of the market. They failed to recognize the underlying trends that were driving Netflix's growth: the increasing popularity of online services, the demand for convenience, and the frustration with Blockbuster's outdated business practices. Blockbuster had the opportunity to acquire Netflix early on, but they refused, convinced that their own retail model was superior. This was a critical error in judgment, a failure to see the strategic advantage that Netflix represented. As broadband internet access became more widespread, Netflix shifted its focus to streaming video, offering customers instant access to a vast library of movies and TV shows. This move further eroded Blockbuster's market share, as customers flocked to the convenience and affordability of streaming. Blockbuster finally launched its own streaming service, but it was too late. They were burdened by their legacy infrastructure, their outdated business model, and their inability to adapt to the changing landscape. They were playing catch-up, trying to compete with a company that had already established a dominant position in the streaming market. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy, a stunning downfall for a company that had once been a cultural icon. The story of Blockbuster is a cautionary tale about the importance of foresight and the dangers of complacency. It demonstrates how a company, even one with a dominant market position, can be undone by its failure to anticipate and adapt to change. Blockbuster focused on the present, on maximizing short-term profits, rather than on investing in the future and exploring new opportunities. They were reactive, responding to threats only after they had already materialized, rather than proactive, anticipating challenges and developing strategies to mitigate them. The rise of Netflix and the fall of Blockbuster highlight the importance of strategic thinking and the power of foresight in a dynamic and competitive environment. It shows that the ability to see the bigger picture, to identify underlying trends, and to adapt to change is essential for survival and success. The individual who possesses strategic foresight understands that the future is not predetermined, but rather is shaped by the choices and actions of individuals and organizations. The inability to grasp this fundamental principle is the trap that snares most individuals and organizations. They become fixated on the immediate, on the tangible, on the pressures of the present moment, and they lose sight of the broader context in which they operate. This myopia leads to a reactive, rather than a proactive, approach to challenges. They are constantly putting out fires, responding to crises, and dealing with immediate threats without ever addressing the underlying causes or developing long-term solutions. They are trapped in a cycle of short-term thinking, unable to break free and chart a course towards a more desirable future. This reactive stance is often rooted in a deep-seated fear of the unknown. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It requires imagination, planning, and a willingness to take calculated risks. Many individuals and organizations prefer the illusion of control offered by focusing on the present. The present, after all, is knowable. It is concrete. It is within their grasp. The future, on the other hand, is uncertain, unpredictable, and potentially threatening. It demands that they confront their own limitations, their own vulnerabilities, and their own lack of knowledge. And so, they retreat into the familiar, into the comfortable, into the world of the present, where they feel safe and secure, even as the world around them is changing at an accelerating pace. This preference for the present is also fueled by a powerful psychological bias known as present bias, which is the tendency to overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue future rewards. People are simply more motivated by things they can get right now than by things they might get in the future, even if the future rewards are significantly larger. This bias can lead to impulsive decisions, poor planning, and a general lack of foresight. Individuals and organizations become trapped in a cycle of instant gratification, sacrificing long-term success for short-term gains. The consequences of this short-sightedness can be devastating. They miss opportunities, fall behind their competitors, and ultimately become obsolete. They are like the chess player who focuses only on the next move, without considering the overall strategy or the potential consequences of their actions. They may win a few individual battles, but they ultimately lose the war. To escape this trap, one must cultivate a mindset of strategic foresight. This requires a conscious effort to overcome the psychological biases that cloud our judgment and limit our ability to see the bigger picture. It demands that we challenge our assumptions, question our beliefs, and actively seek out new information and perspectives. It requires that we develop the ability to think critically, to analyze complex situations, and to identify underlying patterns and trends. It means that we must be willing to embrace uncertainty, to take calculated risks, and to learn from our mistakes. Foresight requires the ability to model out potential future scenarios. It is recognizing that every decision branches into a new reality, a reality one is more likely to thrive in if one has seen it coming. It's about understanding cause and effect, action and consequence. Without seeing the branching paths of potential future states, one can only react. And reaction, as a method, is always too late. To truly embrace a strategic Machiavellian approach, one must understand that advantage is not merely seized, but painstakingly constructed. It's a calculated accumulation of marginal gains, each carefully orchestrated to tilt the playing field in your favor. This is not about luck or chance, but about systematically exploiting every available opportunity to create a position of overwhelming dominance. The Machiavellian strategist views the world as a complex game of chess, where every player is vying for control of the board. They understand that success requires not only skill and intelligence, but also a ruthless pragmatism and a willingness to do whatever it takes to win. This often involves making difficult choices, even choices that may be morally ambiguous. But the Machiavellian strategist understands that in the game of power, morality is often a luxury that cannot be afforded. They are willing to sacrifice short-term popularity for long-term advantage, to make enemies in the pursuit of their goals, and to manipulate others when necessary. They are masters of deception, knowing how to present themselves in a way that inspires trust and confidence, while simultaneously concealing their true intentions. This is not about being evil, but about being realistic. The world is a competitive place, and those who are unwilling to play the game by its rules will inevitably be left behind. The Machiavellian strategist is not afraid to be ruthless, because they understand that the stakes are too high to afford sentimentality. They are driven by a relentless desire to achieve their goals, and they will stop at nothing to succeed. They understand the psychology of their opponents, their fears, their desires, and their weaknesses. They exploit these vulnerabilities to gain an advantage, using information as a weapon to manipulate and control. They are masters of persuasion, able to convince others to do their bidding by appealing to their self-interest or by playing on their emotions. They are also skilled at building alliances, forging partnerships with those who can help them achieve their goals. They understand that no one can succeed alone, and that collaboration is often the key to victory. But they are also aware that alliances are often temporary, and that they must always be prepared to betray their partners if necessary. The Machiavellian strategist is a master of risk management, carefully assessing the potential consequences of every action before making a decision. They understand that every decision carries a risk, but they are willing to take calculated risks in order to achieve their goals. They are not afraid to fail, but they learn from their mistakes and use them to improve their strategy. They are constantly adapting to changing circumstances, and they are always one step ahead of their opponents. They understand that the game of power is never truly over, and that they must always be vigilant and prepared to defend their position. They are not content to simply maintain the status quo. They are always striving to improve their position and to expand their influence. They are driven by a deep-seated desire to leave their mark on the world, to create a legacy that will endure long after they are gone. The Machiavellian strategist understands that true power comes not from wealth or status, but from the ability to control and influence others. They are masters of human psychology, able to understand and manipulate the motivations of those around them. They use this knowledge to build alliances, to exploit weaknesses, and to achieve their goals. They are not afraid to be ruthless, but they are also aware of the importance of maintaining a reputation for fairness and integrity. They understand that trust is a valuable asset and that it can be easily lost. Therefore, they are careful to cultivate a reputation for honesty, even when they are engaging in deception. They are masters of disguise, able to present themselves in a way that is both appealing and trustworthy. They are also skilled at detecting deception in others, able to see through their lies and manipulations. The Machiavellian strategist is a student of history, learning from the successes and failures of those who came before them. They understand that history is full of examples of those who have achieved great power through cunning and manipulation. They study these examples carefully, seeking to glean insights that can be applied to their own strategies. They are also aware of the dangers of hubris, understanding that even the most powerful individuals can be brought down by their own arrogance. Therefore, they are careful to remain humble and to avoid becoming complacent. They are constantly learning and adapting, seeking to improve their skills and knowledge. They are never satisfied with their current level of achievement, and they are always striving to reach new heights. The Machiavellian strategist is a master of self-control, able to suppress their emotions and to remain calm under pressure. They understand that emotions can cloud judgment and lead to mistakes. Therefore, they are careful to cultivate a sense of detachment, allowing them to analyze situations objectively and to make rational decisions. They are also skilled at managing their own stress, understanding that prolonged stress can impair cognitive function and lead to burnout. Therefore, they are careful to prioritize their own well-being, taking time for rest and relaxation. They are also skilled at delegating tasks, understanding that they cannot do everything themselves. They surround themselves with capable individuals who can help them achieve their goals. They are careful to choose their associates wisely, selecting those who are loyal, trustworthy, and competent. They are also willing to mentor and develop their subordinates, helping them to grow and to reach their full potential. The Machiavellian strategist is a visionary leader, able to see the big picture and to inspire others to follow their lead. They have a clear understanding of their goals, and they are able to communicate their vision effectively. They are also able to motivate others to work towards a common goal, creating a sense of unity and purpose. They are not afraid to take risks, but they are also careful to weigh the potential consequences of their actions. They are willing to challenge the status quo, but they are also aware of the importance of maintaining stability. They are able to balance these competing forces, creating a dynamic and sustainable environment. The Machiavellian strategist is a master of innovation, constantly seeking new and better ways to achieve their goals. They are not afraid to experiment with new ideas, and they are willing to learn from their mistakes. They are also skilled at adapting to changing circumstances, quickly adjusting their strategies to meet new challenges. They are not afraid to disrupt the status quo, and they are willing to take risks in order to achieve their vision. They are driven by a relentless pursuit of excellence, and they are always striving to improve their performance. They are not satisfied with mediocrity, and they are constantly pushing themselves and others to reach new heights. History is littered with the wreckage of empires that failed to anticipate the long-term consequences of their actions. Consider the Roman Empire, a civilization that achieved unparalleled dominance through military might and sophisticated engineering. Yet, their relentless expansion, driven by a thirst for conquest and resources, ultimately stretched their logistical capabilities to the breaking point. They became reliant on far-flung supply lines, vulnerable to disruption, and increasingly expensive to maintain. This overextension, coupled with internal political strife and the erosion of their core values, created a systemic vulnerability that ultimately led to their decline. The Romans, in their pursuit of short-term gains, neglected to account for the cascading effects of their choices on the overall health and stability of their empire. Their focus remained fixed on immediate territorial acquisitions, blinding them to the insidious threats brewing beneath the surface of their apparent invincibility. They failed to recognize that true power lies not merely in the accumulation of resources, but in the careful management and sustainable application of those resources over time. Their strategic vision was myopic, limited to the horizon of immediate gratification rather than the distant shores of long-term prosperity. They became victims of their own success, their arrogance blinding them to the inherent fragility of even the most formidable empire. Contrast this with empires that demonstrated a greater capacity for foresight. The British Empire, for example, initially expanded through aggressive colonization and resource extraction, but gradually evolved a more nuanced approach to governance and trade. They invested in infrastructure, established legal systems, and cultivated local elites, creating a network of dependencies that served their long-term interests. This strategic shift, driven by a recognition that brute force alone could not sustain their dominance, allowed them to maintain control over vast territories for extended periods. They understood the importance of building alliances, fostering economic interdependence, and cultivating a sense of shared interest, even if that interest was ultimately aligned with their own imperial ambitions. They recognized that true power lies not in outright domination, but in the subtle art of influence and the creation of mutually beneficial relationships. Their strategic vision extended beyond the immediate horizon, encompassing the long-term implications of their actions and the need to adapt to changing circumstances. Military history offers similar lessons. A classic example is the Schlieffen Plan, Germany's strategy for a swift victory in World War I. The plan relied on a rapid advance through neutral Belgium to encircle and defeat the French army before turning east to confront Russia. While initially promising, the plan failed due to a number of factors, including unforeseen Belgian resistance, logistical challenges, and a miscalculation of the speed at which Russia could mobilize its forces. The Germans, fixated on the initial execution of their plan, failed to adequately account for the unpredictable nature of war and the potential for unforeseen contingencies. Their strategic vision was rigid and inflexible, unable to adapt to the evolving realities on the battlefield. They underestimated their opponents, overestimated their own capabilities, and ultimately paid the price for their lack of foresight. In contrast, consider the Allied strategy in World War II, which involved a multi-pronged approach that combined air power, naval blockades, and ground offensives. This strategy, while complex and resource-intensive, ultimately proved successful because it accounted for the strengths and weaknesses of both the Allied forces and the Axis powers. The Allies recognized that a single, decisive blow was unlikely to achieve victory, and instead opted for a long-term strategy of attrition that gradually eroded the enemy's capabilities. They understood the importance of coordinating their efforts, leveraging their technological advantages, and exploiting the vulnerabilities of their adversaries. Their strategic vision was comprehensive and adaptable, allowing them to respond effectively to changing circumstances and ultimately achieve their objectives. They learned from the mistakes of the past, recognizing that true victory requires not only military might, but also careful planning, strategic flexibility, and a willingness to adapt to the unexpected. These examples illustrate a critical principle. Advantage consistently favors those who possess foresight, who are able to anticipate the long-term consequences of their actions and to adapt their strategies accordingly. The psychology of foresight delves into the very nature of how we perceive time and causality. Those who prioritize short-term gains often fall prey to impulsive decisions, neglecting the ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate present. This is a failure of mental modeling, an inability to accurately simulate future scenarios and their potential outcomes. The human brain, when operating at its most strategic, acts as a prediction engine, constantly evaluating possibilities and assigning probabilities. Foresight is not simply about guessing what might happen. It's about understanding the underlying forces at play and anticipating how they will interact to shape the future landscape. Individuals who lack foresight tend to be reactive, constantly playing catch-up, their actions dictated by the immediate pressures of the moment rather than a proactive vision of where they want to be. They are, in essence, prisoners of the present, unable to break free from the constraints of their immediate circumstances. The capacity for foresight is deeply intertwined with cognitive functions such as working memory, attention span, and abstract reasoning. Working memory allows us to hold multiple pieces of information in our minds simultaneously, enabling us to consider different perspectives and potential consequences. A short attention span, on the other hand, limits our ability to focus on the long term, making us more susceptible to distractions and short-sighted decisions. Abstract reasoning allows us to see patterns and connections that are not immediately obvious, enabling us to anticipate future trends and develop innovative solutions. These cognitive abilities are not fixed. They can be cultivated and strengthened through deliberate practice and training. Strategy games, such as chess or Go, are excellent tools for developing foresight, as they require players to anticipate their opponent's moves and plan several steps ahead. These games force us to think strategically, to consider the long-term implications of our actions, and to adapt our plans as the situation evolves. Furthermore, emotional regulation plays a critical role in foresight. Fear, anxiety, and greed can cloud our judgment, leading us to make impulsive decisions that undermine our long-term goals. The ability to remain calm and rational under pressure is essential for strategic thinking. Those who are easily swayed by emotions are more likely to make mistakes, to overreact to setbacks, and to miss opportunities. The grandmasters of strategy understand the importance of emotional detachment, of maintaining a clear and objective perspective even in the face of adversity. They are able to separate their emotions from their analysis, allowing them to make rational decisions based on the best available information. This is not to say that emotions are inherently detrimental to foresight. Rather, it is the uncontrolled and unexamined emotions that can lead to poor decision-making. Consider the phenomenon of confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. This bias can severely limit our ability to anticipate future challenges and opportunities, as we become trapped in a self-reinforcing cycle of selective perception. To overcome confirmation bias, we must actively seek out dissenting opinions and challenge our own assumptions. We must be willing to consider alternative perspectives and to acknowledge the possibility that we might be wrong. This requires intellectual humility, a willingness to admit our limitations and to learn from our mistakes. Foresight is not about being right all the time. It's about being willing to adapt and to learn from our experiences. It is about developing a mental framework that allows us to anticipate future possibilities and to respond effectively to whatever challenges may arise. Those who cultivate this mental agility are best positioned to navigate the complexities of the world and to achieve their long-term goals. Their adaptability is their strength, their foresight their guiding star. Advantage in the long game demands a relentless objectivity, especially when the stakes are high and emotions run deep. Take, for example, the strategic maneuvering employed within the hyper-competitive world of technology acquisitions. Imagine a scenario where a tech giant, Titan Corp, seeks to acquire a promising startup, Innovate Now, known for its groundbreaking artificial intelligence algorithms. Titan Corp, driven by the desire to bolster its market share and secure a technological edge, initiates negotiations. However, beneath the surface of cordial discussions lies a complex web of calculated moves and hidden agendas. The CEO of Titan Corp, a seasoned strategist named Anya Sharma, understands that the acquisition price will be heavily influenced by Innovate Now's perceived value. She recognizes a critical vulnerability: Innovate Now's reliance on a single key engineer, a brilliant but temperamental individual named Ben Carter. Anya's strategic foresight leads her to believe that if Ben Carter were to leave Innovate Now, the startup's value would plummet, giving Titan Corp significant leverage in negotiations. Rather than directly attempting to poach Ben Carter, which could trigger legal complications and raise suspicions, Anya implements a more subtle and calculated strategy. She initiates a series of carefully orchestrated events designed to sow discord within Innovate Now. She tasks her team to leak carefully crafted rumors to industry news outlets, suggesting that Innovate Now is facing internal conflicts and financial instability. These rumors, though lacking concrete evidence, begin to create an atmosphere of uncertainty and anxiety within Innovate Now. Simultaneously, Anya discreetly approaches key venture capitalists who have invested in Innovate Now, subtly expressing her concerns about the startup's long-term viability. She highlights the potential risks associated with relying so heavily on a single individual like Ben Carter, subtly planting seeds of doubt in their minds. These actions, while seemingly innocuous, are designed to erode Innovate Now's confidence and create internal pressure. As the rumors spread and investor concerns mount, Ben Carter becomes increasingly frustrated. He feels undervalued and unsupported by Innovate Now's leadership, who are preoccupied with damage control and struggling to maintain morale. Anya anticipates this reaction and initiates a parallel track, discreetly contacting Ben Carter's former colleagues and mentors. Through these indirect channels, she subtly conveys Titan Corp's admiration for Ben Carter's talent and hints at potential opportunities within her organization. She paints a picture of a more stable and rewarding environment, where his contributions would be truly valued and recognized. This indirect approach avoids any direct solicitation that could be construed as poaching, while effectively planting the idea of leaving Innovate Now in Ben Carter's mind. Over time, the cumulative effect of these calculated maneuvers begins to take its toll. Innovate Now's internal conflicts escalate, investor confidence wanes, and Ben Carter becomes increasingly disillusioned. Eventually, he reaches a breaking point and decides to resign from Innovate Now, citing personal reasons. The news of Ben Carter's departure sends shockwaves through the industry, and Innovate Now's valuation plummets as Anya predicted. With Innovate Now weakened and vulnerable, Titan Corp swoops in with a revised acquisition offer, significantly lower than its initial proposal. Innovate Now, desperate to secure a deal and avoid collapse, has no choice but to accept Titan Corp's terms. Anya Sharma, through her strategic foresight and calculated maneuvers, successfully leveraged a perceived vulnerability to gain a significant advantage in the acquisition process. This ruthless example highlights the power of foresight in anticipating future events and manipulating the environment to achieve a desired outcome. It demonstrates that advantage often favors those who can think several steps ahead, identify critical leverage points, and execute their plans with precision and unwavering resolve. This is not merely about predicting the future, it is about shaping it. The absence of foresight is a trap disguised as immediate comfort. It's the illusion of stability, the false promise of the status quo. The weak are lured into this trap by their inability to perceive the chain of consequences that ripple outwards from their actions, or more often, their inaction. They react, rather than anticipate. They fixate on the present moment, blind to the strategic landscape that surrounds them, and deaf to the subtle signals that betray the intentions of others. This myopia is not simply a lack of intelligence. It's a deeply ingrained psychological bias, a preference for the familiar over the uncertain, the comfortable over the challenging. It's a refusal to engage with the complex web of cause and effect that governs every aspect of life, from business negotiations to personal relationships. The trap is sprung when these individuals find themselves unexpectedly vulnerable, their options limited, their freedom curtailed. They are caught off guard by events they should have foreseen, outmaneuvered by opponents they underestimated, and ultimately, forced to accept outcomes they could have avoided. The truly devastating aspect of this trap is that it is often self-inflicted. It is the result of a conscious choice to avoid the mental exertion required for strategic thinking, the disciplined analysis needed to identify potential threats and opportunities, and the courageous action required to implement a proactive plan. Instead, the weak choose the path of least resistance, the easy comfort of conformity, the reassuring echo chamber of their own limited perspectives. They surround themselves with like-minded individuals who reinforce their biases, shielding them from dissenting opinions and challenging ideas. They become prisoners of their own intellectual stagnation, unable to adapt to changing circumstances, incapable of generating innovative solutions, and ultimately destined to repeat the same mistakes. This cycle of failure is not a matter of bad luck. It is the inevitable consequence of a flawed mindset. It is the price paid for neglecting the fundamental principles of strategic foresight, for failing to recognize that advantage is not a gift, but a skill, a muscle that must be constantly exercised and refined. The weak convince themselves that their passivity is prudence, their indecision is caution, and their lack of ambition is contentment. They rationalize their failures by blaming external factors, conveniently ignoring their own role in creating the circumstances that led to their downfall. They fail to understand that the world rewards those who take calculated risks, who embrace uncertainty, and who are willing to challenge the status quo. The trap of limited foresight is not just a personal failing, it's a societal vulnerability. Organizations and nations that are led by individuals who lack strategic vision are destined to decline, to be outcompeted and outmaneuvered by those who possess a more sophisticated understanding of the game. These organizations become bureaucratic and inflexible, unable to adapt to changing market conditions, resistant to innovation, and ultimately vulnerable to disruption. The leaders prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability, sacrificing the future for the sake of immediate gratification. They foster a culture of complacency, where mediocrity is tolerated and excellence is discouraged. They fail to invest in the development of their employees, neglecting to cultivate the strategic thinking skills that are essential for long-term success. The consequences of this lack of foresight can be devastating, leading to financial losses, reputational damage, and ultimately organizational collapse. The trap is not merely an individual weakness but a systemic flaw. The weak are often incentivized to remain weak, rewarded for their conformity and penalized for their dissent. The systems they operate within discourage critical thinking, stifle innovation, and prioritize obedience over initiative. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle of mediocrity, where the truly capable are suppressed and the incompetent are promoted. To escape this trap requires a fundamental shift in mindset, a willingness to challenge assumptions, to embrace uncertainty, and to cultivate a culture of continuous learning and improvement. It requires leaders who are willing to take calculated risks, to invest in the development of their employees, and to foster a culture of innovation and creativity. It requires individuals who are willing to take responsibility for their own actions, to learn from their mistakes, and to constantly strive to improve their strategic thinking skills. The path to advantage lies not in avoiding risk, but in understanding it, in calculating it, and in mitigating it. It lies not in clinging to the familiar, but in embracing the unknown, in exploring new possibilities, and in constantly seeking new ways to gain a competitive edge. The absence of foresight is a silent killer, slowly eroding competence and inviting defeat. Advantage is not granted. It is earned through meticulous preparation and relentless anticipation. The ability to project future outcomes with a degree of accuracy separates the masters from the amateurs. This is not about predicting the future with certainty, an impossible task, but about understanding the range of possible outcomes and preparing accordingly. It requires a deep understanding of the underlying dynamics at play, the ability to identify patterns and trends, and the willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. The strategic mind sees not only the immediate situation, but also the potential consequences of its actions, the ripple effects that can extend far beyond the present moment. This is a mindset that values information, that seeks out data and insights from diverse sources, and that constantly questions its own assumptions. The cost of neglecting foresight is far greater than the effort required to cultivate it. It is a vulnerability that can be exploited, a weakness that can be turned against you. In a world of constant change and increasing complexity, the ability to anticipate future challenges and opportunities is more critical than ever. Those who fail to adapt will be left behind, relegated to the margins of history. Strategic foresight is a discipline that requires constant practice and refinement. It is not a skill that can be acquired overnight, but a habit of mind that must be cultivated over time. It involves the development of mental models that allow you to simulate future scenarios, to test different hypotheses, and to identify potential risks and opportunities. It requires the ability to think critically, to challenge your own biases, and to remain open to new information. The true strategist understands that the future is not predetermined, but rather a product of choices and actions. By understanding the forces that shape the future, you can position yourself to influence it. The absence of foresight is not merely a lack of planning, it is a failure of imagination, a refusal to consider the possibility that the future might not be what you expect. This is a dangerous complacency that can lead to catastrophic outcomes. The psychological aspect of strategic foresight is often overlooked, yet it is crucial to success. Many individuals and organizations are trapped by their own cognitive biases, clinging to outdated beliefs and resisting change. They are unwilling to confront the possibility that their assumptions might be wrong, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. This is a form of self-deception that can blind them to emerging threats and opportunities. The ability to overcome these biases requires a high degree of self-awareness, a willingness to challenge your own beliefs, and a commitment to intellectual honesty. It also requires the ability to empathize with others, to understand their perspectives, and to anticipate their reactions. Strategic foresight is not just about predicting the future. It is about understanding the present, about recognizing the forces that are shaping the world around you, and about positioning yourself to take advantage of those forces. Ultimately, foresight is about control. It's about seizing the initiative and shaping your own destiny rather than being swept along by events. It is about identifying the critical junctures, the points of leverage where a small intervention can have a disproportionate impact. The strategically minded actively seek out these opportunities, positioning themselves to exploit them for maximum advantage. They understand that the world is a complex system, and that seemingly small actions can have far-reaching consequences. Therefore, the absence of foresight is a surrender of control, a passive acceptance of whatever fate may bring. It is a denial of your own agency, a refusal to take responsibility for your own future. Those who lack foresight are destined to be victims, always reacting to events rather than shaping them. They are the pawns in someone else's game.